Richard Leonard graduated from the Infantry Dog School Handler School at Fort Benning, Georgia on May 3rd, 1968. Jelly, that's your birthday. It was a tough school. Not only trained them as Scout Dog handlers, they specialized in care for the dog. They were trained in repelling, waterborne and heliborne operations, and expedient river crossing. His gift for graduation was a deployment to Vietnam assigned to the 47th. They had more than 100 dogs in that unit in Vietnam. And the casualty rate for the dogs in that unit was well over 10%. He served from May 68 to April 1969 along with his dog Toby X365. Please welcome U.S. Army dog handler Richard Leonard.
I hope I have the ability to get through this. Like Bob, very emotional. I have to disagree with him though. He did have a good dog, but there was one dog a little bit better. His number was X365. His name was Toby. I loved that dog. A bunch of us, several of us, ended up in Fort Benning at the Dog Detachment Training School there, as a lot were dropouts from the NCO school. I was going to OCS, but I got there a month early and noticed the training that they were giving those young men. And I decided, no, this isn't for me. I don't want to be responsible for the lives of 32 men with just a, what do you call it, just a treadmill, just going straight through. No time to really learn what you were doing. So I resigned from that school. Later, I found out that probably saved my life. A few of us asked a first lieutenant in Vietnam who was serving as a logistical officer for a company out in the field. We asked him, what's the life expectancy of a field officer? That would be a second lieutenant, platoon leader, and a company commander, captain. He said 4 months. If they weren't killed within 4 months or wounded so severely they had to send them back to the States, they were automatically rotated to the rear for the rest of their tour. When I was in OCS, we were told 70% of us were going to go to Vietnam as second lieutenants, platoon leaders. The other 30% would go as forward auxiliary observers. They didn't last very long out in the field either. So I credit my decision to get out of OCS as to saving my life. I went to a holding company, casual company, and before I knew what was going on, I was assigned to the 47th Infantry Platoon Scout Dog. We trained, well, let me back up. On about the second day of that training, we were told to go over to the kennels, walk up and down, and pick a dog that you wanted to have. I walked over and started going up and through past the dogs, and I could hear this dog barking. Oh, he was loud. And I thought, oh, I don't really want that dog. And I got up to him and looked at him. No, he's too loud. And I kept going. The further I went, the louder he got. And I thought, okay, he's picking me out, it looks like. So I turned around and went back, and they let me into his kennel, and he just came to me. And we started bonding right then and there. Now, he was a vicious dog in that he would not let anybody into his area except at the very last, when I had my wife with me there at Fort Benning, she could come into him. And our platoon clerk, John Wall, after many, many months of walking by and talking with him was finally accepted by Toby. Other than that, nobody could go in on him. He just was that kind of a dog. But he was very effective. After 2 weeks of basic obedience, we then started our field training. There we learned how to read the alerts that our dog gave us. We were trained on personnel. Dogs really couldn't tell a U.S. soldier, if you will, from an NBA, North Vietnamese, Army regular, or anybody else. They just knew it was personnel. We were trained on booby traps, punji pits, tripwires, snipers. Basically, I sum it up as saying anything that was out there that wasn't supposed to be there. Our dogs would alert on them and let us know. It was a real temptation not to watch your dog because you were concerned about what was seeing out there. But the thing about it is, our dogs knew what was out there. And if you watched your dog, he would tell you. And every dog is different. So the alerts that my dog would give would be different from what Bob's dog would give, and so on. After 12 weeks of training, we were sent home for 2 weeks of leave, had to report back to Fort Benning. We went to Lawson Airfield after 10 days of preparing, and I saw 2 huge airplanes. I'd never seen anything so big in my life. The wingspan of those things were so big that sitting on the ground, the wings would have scraped the ground. But they were little wheels about this size at the end of those wings. They were C-141 airlifters, starlifters. And I wondered about that. How in the world is that bucket of bolts going to get up in the sky? Well, they dropped open the back door and we drove in 2 deuce-and-a-halves, 2.5-ton trucks, loaded with equipment, loaded with dogs in their kennels, and all of our equipment. We had 2 deuce-and-a-halves and a Jeep in one, and 2 deuce-and-a-halves and a water trailer in the other. And we took off from Lawson Airfield, flew to Alaska for 8 hours, landed. We had a 3-hour layover, took our dogs out, walked them, let them do their business on the runway, got a bite to eat, loaded them back up, and took off again for Japan, another 8 hours. Stopped, refueled, another 5 hours to Vietnam. Landed at Tonson Air Force Base. Trucked to Ben Hoa, where we acclimatized with our dogs for about 30 days. After that, we got orders and we headed up north. We were assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, 2nd Brigade, that was headquartered in LZ Sally, LZ standing for landing zone. It was a helicopter landing zone. And there, when we got there, there wasn't much there. They weren't prepared. We had to build our own camp. A couple of our squads went up a couple of weeks early and at least got our tents up. The rest of it was up to us. We did a lot of training with our dogs for the first little while. We did a lot of sandbagging. We paid the local youth kids a penny a sandbag. That was a lot of money to them. And we had to sandbag about 3 feet high all around our tents. It had to be above our cots. And that was for protection for, incoming rounds and that sort of thing. So we did a lot of that. We became operational on the 17th of July, 1968. At that point in time, we started pulling patrols. Now, in our unit, we would go out in the field for 3 days, and then we would come back. Generally in a helicopter, out and then back in for a period of time to rest our dogs because it was hot and humid, and they just wouldn't work that long. In Bob's unit, every unit was different. His unit would generally go out for 5 days. And I applaud him for that. I don't know how he or the dog could handle that. When we went out there, in my rucksack, I had cans of dog food, Gaines burgers for my dog. I'm trying to get into my pocket here. If you had to have a can, you have to have a can opener. Here's the can opener I used over there at the Army issue can opener to open up the cans. I carried 2 gallons of water with me. 1 quart was for me. 7 quarts were for my dog. He didn't drink that. I carried it in case he got a heat stroke, overheated. I needed to cool him down immediately. And so that's what the 7 quarts. I had two 2-quart canteens on my rucksack, a backpack, and I put 4 1-quart canteens on my pistol belt, and carried that. This is the comb that I used on Toby. I miss him. Well, I worked with Toby several months. The hardest day I had in Vietnam, the most sad day I had in Vietnam, was the day I had to give up Toby. Our platoon leader changed the policy in our platoon and didn't want any squad leaders going out to the field as dog handlers. He wanted them to go out to the field with his handlers to make sure the handlers were being used properly, and to make sure the handlers were doing their job correctly. So I did go back out in the field several times. When I was not out in the field, I was the platoon maintenance person. I kept our 4 deuce-and-a-half operational, the Jeep. We obtained 2 generators. They were mounted in a trailer. They weren't very big, about 2.5 times the size of a lawnmower engine, but they were hard to keep running because of the dust from the helicopters and everything. And so I spent a lot of time maintaining those generators. I played electrician, ran wires to our tent. We called them hooches. So we'd have electric lights. When we left, our platoon sergeant went into Columbus, Georgia, and purchased 2 late 1940, 1950 refrigerators and loaded them in our trucks, and we took them with us. When we got the generators and they got working, we hooked them up. One day, Seabees come driving by and stopped. I happened to be up there, and they said, "Hey, we understand you've got refrigerators." I said, "Yeah, we've got some." Reached in his pocket, pulled out $5 and said, "Here, I'll give you $5 for a cool glass of water." His buddy that was with him, "Here's another $5 for a cool glass of water." I said, "Thank you, but no thanks. Stay right here." I went and got them 2 glasses of water, gave it to them, went back and got 2 more. Next day, the next 2 or 3 days, we got a shower. We didn't have one before. So the Seabees came back and they built us a shower with a 30-gallon water tank and a heater in the middle, and that was our shower. Before that, I learned how to bathe and wash my hair on 3 pans of water, dog pans of water from our water trailer. One of the things, we talked about was the dogs and their handlers were credited with saving the lives of 10,000 soldiers. We were told that the NVA, North Vietnamese Army, put a $5,000 bounty on the head of a dog and its handler, or its handler. $5,000 each. Doesn't sound like a lot of money. But when you consider that the average earnings in Vietnam at that time for the peasants was $200 to $300 a year, $5,000 was a lot of money. That's how they were afraid of us. They knew we could do our job, and we did. I'll tell you the time I was the most scared in Vietnam. I was in a helicopter with Toby. If you can see behind you, you can see the clouds in the mountains right there. The pilot was going up one ravine, coming back down, going up and coming back down. After a while, he turned around and said, "I'm lost. I don't know where we're at." I thought, oh, great. All I want to do is get shot down and he not know where we're at. And see, he kept doing that. All of a sudden, down he went. He went down so fast that we came up off the floor of the helicopter, back down again, and landed right where he was supposed to be. I thought, you sucker. You knew all along where we were. But it scared the heebie-jeebies out of me. I'd just like to close. When I got back, after we got on our Freedom Bird, we called them, or 707 Quick, and got back. A few years later, I participated in a study at the University of Utah, the VA Center up there. The Army was just beginning to look into PTSD. So I participated in a study that they had there. And one of the PIs, principal investigators they're called, was a psychiatrist. And I asked him one day, I said, do I have PTSD? And he said, all Vietnam veterans have PTSD. It's just a matter of degree. So I guess we have it. So I would just like to thank you for this group therapy session for me. Really, that's what it is. I find that if I can talk a little bit about it periodically, I can handle the rest. To all Vietnam veterans and to all veterans, I would just like to say, welcome home. Yes,